Well, it is the battle of the scandals, and today's battlefield is Florida, as both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump head to the Sunshine State. Hello, everybody. I'm Jenna Lee.
And I'm John Scott. Florida, with its 29 electoral votes, is the biggest prize of all the battlegrounds. Election Day just 4 weeks away. To remind Florida voters how important they are, former Vice President Al Gore will be joining Hillary Clinton in Miami. Remember those hanging chads in the 2000 election? Well, polls give Clinton a slight lead there as Wikileaks releases more emails said to be from inside her campaign. And Donald Trump also heads to South Florida this evening. He's seen his numbers slide since the leaked Access Hollywood tape, and fellow Republicans are backing further away. We have live Team Fox coverage. Mike Emanuel is live in Miami, where the Clinton team will rally this afternoon. But we begin with John Roberts at Trump Tower in New York City. John.
John, good morning to you. And Donald Trump heading for a big week of campaigning across the battleground states as he opens up a new front of warfare against the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, after Ryan yesterday in a conference call with the House GOP conference said that basically, even though he's not going to withdraw his endorsement of Donald Trump and will vote for him, that he's basically done with Donald Trump. He's not going to campaign with him, not going to defend him. Donald Trump set off a set of Twitter tirades this morning against Ryan, saying, among other things, quote, "Our very weak and ineffective leader Paul Ryan had a bad conference call where his members went wild at his disloyalty." Another tweet, quote, "Despite winning the second debate in a landslide, every poll, it is hard to do well when Paul Ryan and others give zero support." At the same time, he's now battling some in the Republican leadership. He's going after Hillary Clinton harder than he ever has before. A couple of big events in Pennsylvania yesterday, one outside of Pittsburgh, another one in Wilkes-Barre, where he really drilled down again on what happened in the White House back in the 1990s, Bill Clinton and his infidelities, and what he says was Hillary Clinton going after the women who Bill Clinton had the affairs with. And now at a Fox News exclusive, a brand new television ad that is going up later on today, which takes some very unflattering video of Hillary Clinton and puts it all together in an ad labeled "Dangerous." Here's a look at that. And in another tweet just as a few minutes ago, Donald Trump indicating that his campaign is going to go in a new direction, perhaps the way it was back in the early days of the primary campaign, tweeting out, quote, "It's so nice that the shackles have been taken off of me, and I can now fight for America the way I want to." I talked with a campaign insider to say, give me an interpretation of what that means. And I was told that basically Donald Trump feels like he is not bound to play the same sort of politically correct powder puff football that many in the Republican Party want him to play. So I would suggest, John, watch for Donald Trump to sort of go back in time a bit. Remember how he was early in the primary campaign, slashing and burning all the way along, taking out his opponents. That may be where that campaign is headed now in these final 29 days. John?
So we should be prepared for an even uglier campaign over the next 4 weeks?
I would say prepare for nuclear war. Duck and cover. Get out the newspapers.
All right. I remember those drills from childhood. Thanks very much. John Roberts, Trump Tower.
Thanks.
And now to the other side. Hillary Clinton will be joined on the campaign trail today by Al Gore, the 2000 Democratic presidential nominee, appearing with her in the battleground state of Florida. The campaign hoping the former vice president will help Clinton with young voters concerned about climate change. Our senior political correspondent, Mike Emanuel, is live in Miami with more. Mike?
Well, hi, Jenna. Yeah, Hillary Clinton just told a predominantly African-American radio station here in Miami that Florida is the key. If she wins the Sunshine State, based on her read of the electoral map, there is no way Donald Trump will win the White House. So Clinton will get some help from former Vice President Al Gore here in Miami. He is known for his climate change activism. He is also a reminder for Democrats about the risk of voting for a third-party candidate being the difference in an election, as Democrats believe it was for him in 2000. The Real Clear Politics average of recent Florida polls reveals a close race, with Clinton 45.1 to Trump 42.7 when you factor in third-party candidates Gary Johnson and Jill Stein. Last night, Clinton was on the road in Columbus, Ohio, another battleground. Her campaign says she drew the largest crowd so far for her, and Clinton took aim at her opponent, Trump.
On the day that I was in the Situation Room watching the raid that brought Osama bin Laden to justice, he was hosting Celebrity Apprentice. So if he wants to talk about what we've been doing the last 30 years, bring it on.
So here in Miami, we will have a Clinton-Gore reunion with a different Clinton at the top of the Democratic ticket. Jenna?
Mike, thank you.
For more on all this, I'm joined by Carol Lee, the White House correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. Carol, Donald Trump was having some issues with female voters and independents prior to the arrival on the scene of that tape on Friday. The tape can't be helping.
No, certainly not. And, you know, as you said, before this tape surfaced on Friday, women, independent voters were moving away from him. And the problem for Donald Trump with that is he can't win without women and independent voters. You know, he has shored up his base. His supporters are very loyal. They are not going anywhere. But in order to get the 270 needed electoral votes, he has to expand beyond that base, and he continues to lose those kinds of voters. And, you know, there was a poll that the Wall Street Journal and NBC did immediately after the tape, before the second debate over the weekend, and it showed that he lost folks. And, you know, it's just an early indication of what we might see going forward. And if he continues to lose women and lose independent voters, it's hard to see how he wins this election.
All right, but let's talk about a potential path for victory for him in the Electoral College. Can he, based on the, you know, states that are still out there and still competitive, can he still eke out a win?
He can. It's a very narrow path, particularly because Pennsylvania appears to be lost for him. You know, he would have to win Florida. He would have to win Ohio. He would have to win, you know, Iowa or Nevada, and he would also need to win New Hampshire, where he's not doing well either. Hillary Clinton is beating him, and in fact, Hillary Clinton is ahead in the polls in almost all of those states. So it's a really, really narrow path for him.
He obviously is having another sort of circular firing squad battle with Paul Ryan and some of the other Republicans. He also tweeted out this morning, with the exception of cheating Bernie out of the nomination, the Democrats have always proven to be far more loyal to each other than the Republicans. He's, you know, again, taking aim at his own party. Is that helping him with his voters? What does that do for him?
Well, it certainly is helping. The people who are supporting him, they like this. They agree with him. You know, Paul Ryan did that conference call yesterday, and he heard an earful from a number of Republican lawmakers who were saying this is not okay, and you know, can you not back the you know, the Republican nominee? It's going to hurt all of us. And you know, you hear that echoed among Donald Trump supporters, but the problem, again, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, is that this is something that does not sit well necessarily with moderates or independent voters. For Donald Trump to be tweeting and in a Twitter war and fighting with the Speaker of the House, who's a member of his own party, at a time when there's just weeks to go before the election and people want to hear about his ideas, or he's not talking about Hillary Clinton, you know, it doesn't seem like it's something that is going to help him, again, expand his voter base. He
also said in that tweet that John Roberts had just now that he is, you know, far and away the winner of the most recent debate. But a CNN ORC instant poll after the second debate found Hillary Clinton trounced him 57% to 34%. Is he looking at an alternate version of reality here, or did he just not see that poll?
Well, I mean, it would be surprising if he said he lost the debate, right? You know, he's obviously wants to claim that he won the debate. Those polls are a little bit tricky because they're not necessarily always an accurate reflection of how voters feel, you know, a few days out. So I think we have yet to see. The question is whether people heard anything in the debate, those who are on the fence, that might move them toward him. And that's the question. That is all he needs to worry about if he wants to win this election in the next few weeks.
And that's the key to winning any election. I mean, it's not, you don't win it with Republican voters or Democratic voters if you're the nominee of each party. You win it with independents.
Right. And you know, what you're seeing is kind of things come a little bit full circle, where he is,
the dynamic is very similar to when he was in the primary. You were talking about his Twitter feed. I mean, he tweeted saying, you know, the shackles have been taken off and now I'm free. That sounds very much like how he was in the primary, and that boded well for him among Republican core supporters. But it's not something that may go well for him with women, with independents, with moderate Republicans, and those are the people that he needs at this stage.
That's what I was going to ask. John Roberts says the shackles have been taken off. Donald Trump is free to be Donald Trump now. Is that going to help him?
Well, you know, it helped him in the primary, but it's not clear that that will help him in the general election. If you just take, for instance, this tape, you know, what he said about this is locker room talk, which he's really doubling down on now. We heard him again say it yesterday. That's not something that may necessarily resonate with women voters, and they're very important. And, you know, not only that, but even before this tape surfaced, he was starting to lose white male voters to Hillary Clinton, which has been his stronghold. And so, you know, being Donald Trump and saying what he thinks worked for him in the primary. He clearly thinks that that might work for him in the general election. But he's also setting, you know, you'll notice in some of the things he said, he's also setting the stage for the blame game. He was saying that, you know, Paul Ryan's not supporting him and how that makes it hard. He might be limping over the finish line. So it's hard. Again, it's really a difficult path for Donald Trump in the next few weeks. And, you know, what remains to be seen whether he can whether his strategy that he used in the primary will be effective in the general election.
Carol Lee is the Wall Street Journal White House correspondent. She'd be covering a President Trump if he gets there, or President Clinton if things stay the same.
Right.
All right. Thanks very much, Carol.
Thank you.
Wikileaks releasing emails it claims are from the Clinton campaign. And we remind you the information may have come to light from unreliable sources. Some are pointing at the Russians. Either way, the emails are out there. They appear to show Hillary Clinton was worried the GOP would not nominate Donald Trump, and that some campaign aides worried that Bill Clinton could be a liability. And former Clinton right-hand man, Doug Band, allegedly called daughter Chelsea a spoiled brat, and a liberal activist called Clinton a liar. Plus, the Clintons team was worried early on about the threat from Senator Bernie Sanders and a potential run by Vice President Joe Biden. Brad Gersman is a Democratic strategist, founding partner of Gotham Government Relations. Kevin McCullough is a syndicated radio host. Great to have you both as we enjoy your company so much. Just want to share this with you. We just got this from our Fox News research department about the electoral map. And we have now just changed Florida and the state of Nevada from toss-up states to leaning Democrat. And I want to bring that into the conversation here, Brad, because I'm curious whether or not there's anything game-changing in these WikiLeaks emails that you think could impair Clinton's campaign.
No, I think this falls into that bucket of just gossip, gossip, gossip. Nothing tangible, nothing hardcore, nothing condemning. Of course, nothing great for her, but that said, I don't think it's going to change the map. As far as the map is concerned, I would just say is that what Trump has done in the last couple of days, since, you know, all the, you know, the hoopla over some of the things that he said is he's emboldened his major core of supporters, but he hasn't done anything to pull in the moderate Republicans or the independents at all, in my estimation.
Let's ask Kevin about that. What do you think of the last few days, but also whether or not what we're seeing from these WikiLeaks dumps, and by the way, there was just a recent one, everyone's just going through those emails, whether or not there's anything that would be game-changing for Clinton?
I haven't seen anything yet. I mean, I don't think that it was interesting that the one activist is saying what a lot of people inside of Hillary's circle have said for years, and that is that she's dishonest and she's not nice, and these people behave in this way, and it's kind of what it mirrors the general perception that the public has. 67% think she's not trustworthy. But in terms of the math and the map, I'm not sure that we're at the final stage even 4 weeks out.
And why is that?
I think that there are other events that may happen. If there's a terrorist attack, if there's another health scare, if there's some other revelation on Trump that is not good, I just think we have, even though we're now down to 28 days, I think we've still got a long bit of the road to go.
You know, Brad, I can't help but think about the rallies that Donald Trump still continues to gather in all of these states. They're still huge. You still have the lines outside. Simon Rosenberg, also a Democratic strategist, says that these rallies do mean something. They do talk about enthusiasm, and enthusiasm can turn to voter turnout. What about that?
Well, again, I think it goes back to his supporters. There's a difference between Trump supporters and Republicans. And the Trump supporters are a subsection of the Republicans, and they are fired up. They are enthusiastic. They will show up anywhere to see Donald Trump. They'll travel in vans, cars, walk, row, whatever they have to do to get to a Trump event. And that's very different. Now, regular Republicans, okay, let's call moderate Republicans, ones that, for instance, I could get along with, those individuals, they are scared, frightened, don't know what the next 28 days will be.
Are they motivated enough to get out and vote for Hillary Clinton? Also for Democrats, are they nervous enough about Donald Trump that they're willing to disregard some of their concerns about Hillary Clinton, Kevin?
I don't think that Clinton has overcome her enthusiasm gap yet. And I do think, I agree with Simon, I think that the rallies actually demonstrate something. She's having a hard time packing in rooms with 300 to 500 people sometimes. You know, they actually make the crowd look bigger by where they put the camera and stuff. He's still drawing tens and tens of thousands to these things. And I would disagree with Brad on this point. Karl Rove won 2 elections, one very close and one not as close, based on enthusiasm in pockets of where the electorate needed to be. And if Trump wins Nevada and Florida and Virginia and Ohio and maybe picks up Michigan or New Hampshire, he's going to win the election.
Well, of course, the electoral map changes at times. And we just saw that change right now, that these states are leaning somewhat in the Democratic way. But we do have several weeks. And I think it's worth pointing out that timeline as well. The Associated Press, after the video leak, after the debate, went to swing states and spoke specifically to undecided women voters. And here's what some of them had to say to the Associated Press. Many Republicans and independents said they already weren't going to support Trump, but weren't convinced to vote for Hillary Clinton. Some said they wouldn't vote at all or would choose Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson. Brad, does that make you nervous?
Look, this is the reality. I mean, I'm not here to advocate for Hillary Clinton. I'm just here to try to, you ask questions, I give answers. As far as Hillary Clinton's concerned, there's a lot of negatives. Come on. And yeah, I think in answer to your question is, so what are the moderate Republicans going to do? Are they going to vote for Trump? Are they going to this, that? I know what they're going to do.
What about the
They're going to be concerned about their own elections locally and where, after they poll the people in their districts, where they want to be and that whether they're going to endorse Trump or not endorse Trump.
Kevin, what do you think of what Brad had to say?
No, I think that he's mostly right. It's just hard to tell still 28 days out what enthusiasm on the day of the election is going to lead to. If you have something like what happened Friday, 2 days before we go to the polls, you're going to depress Republican turnout. But there is a core block of voters that aren't just Republicans. They are blue-collar Democrats in the production states, the Rust Belt states, that I think are largely not noticed in some of these polls. And I just don't know how reliable any of them are.
It seems that both of you are saying that there's an element that's completely out of control for both of these candidates. We don't know what leaks are coming for either of them, and perhaps something like that would determine the election. I mean, Brad, do you think, despite all the strategy and all the money, that's what this is coming down to?
When unfavorables and negatives are so high for both of them that anything can move this election very, very quickly. It's when people are predisposed to dislike both of them. Keep that in mind. That's what the polls are saying. When that's the case, you can get a whole bunch more people on that don't like list. And the other guy or gal can win.
You do have early voting as well, Kevin, right? And so if something like the video comes out and someone's angry enough about the video, does that prompt them to cast a ballot early just in reaction to either the Wikileaks, the video, or anything else?
I actually got an email from a listener this week who said, I already voted. Is it too late to rescind my vote? Because he wanted to take it away because of the leaked audio tape. No, I think that this all plays into the math, and I just think that it's too close and it's far too volatile to be able to say. If Iran, for some reason, attacked one of our vessels in the Gulf, I think that would dramatically impact, particularly the discussion of the Iran deal, and could be very favorable for Trump. If Trump's got other skeletons that are not out yet, Hillary's in a great spot. I just think it's way too close to call.
It makes it tough to analyze. It's great to have you both and have your thoughts. It definitely makes it tough, right? Because you just don't know what's coming in the next few hours, few days, and what will come of it. Brad and Kevin, great to have you. Thank you. John?
You want to stay with Donald Trump.
Toddler on the Trump train. What this little Donald lookalike said to the Republican nominee, it's all happening now. But we begin with a growing rift in the Republican Party as more lawmakers grapple with whether to keep supporting Donald Trump. Welcome to the second hour of Happening Now, everybody. I'm Jenna Lee.
And I'm John Scott. Donald Trump slamming the GOP leadership after Speaker of the House Paul Ryan distanced himself from the nominee over his vulgar comments about women. Those came out on Friday. Some Republicans worry the fallout could also impact the party's control of the Senate and even the House. Yesterday, Speaker Ryan said he was done defending Trump and will no longer campaign with him. Fox Business Network's Blake Berman has the latest from Washington. Blake?
Hi there, John. Jenna, good afternoon to you. Donald Trump has lashed out on Twitter throughout the day at both Paul Ryan and what many view as the establishment wing of the Republican Party. His Twitter rant included the following warning to Republicans today, quoting here from Trump. Disloyal R's are far more difficult than crooked Hillary. They come at you from all sides. They don't know how to win. I will teach them, he says. Now, Trump also appeared to express some relief of not being beholden to party leaders, also writing on Twitter, quote, "It is so nice that the shackles have been taken off me, and I can now fight for America the way that I want to." Despite that dissatisfaction, Trump is playing along the party line this afternoon as he is set to hold 2 fundraisers in Texas from the donor class there. He also has a rally in Florida before his supporters later tonight. One person you will not see along Trump's side on the campaign trail is Ryan, the House Speaker. They are on as thin of ice as ever. Trump this morning tweeting out the following about Ryan, quote, "Our very weak and ineffective leader, Paul Ryan, had a bad conference call where his members went wild at his disloyalty." Now, I asked a Ryan spokesperson earlier today for a comment to these newest tweets that Trump had put out, and I was emailed the following, quote, "Paul Ryan is focusing the next month on defeating Democrats, and all Republicans running for office should probably do the same." John, Jenna should also mention, by the way, in just the last few minutes here, Trump was back on Twitter. He fired off a tweet in John McCain's direction, calling McCain, quote, "very foul-mouthed." That from Trump to McCain. I should mention, it is just 1 o'clock here on the East Coast. We got a long day ahead of us.
Everybody seems to have forgotten Ronald Reagan's 11th commandment, do not criticize thy fellow Republican. Blake Berman.
So.
All right, Blake, thanks. Well, Donald Trump falling in the polls in the wake of the debates and several controversies, sticking with his message that the election is rigged against him and warning his supporters to watch out for fraud at voting locations.
There's no way we're 3 down. Even the polls are crooked, I'm telling you. Look, we're in a rigged system, folks. We're in a rigged system. The only way we can unrig it is get to the polls. But we got to make sure they're honest polls. They can't fix the budget. Isn't it really sad that we don't have stronger leadership on both sides? But that'll change if we win on November 8th. Believe me, it's going to change fast. Going to change fast. But why is it that the President of the United States, we've got no growth. You saw GNP, you saw that. GDP, you saw that, right? It's so bad, like 1%. That means we're not growing. You know, if China goes down to 7 or 8%, it's like considered a national tragedy. Here we are hovering at nothing. Our jobs are gone. We have bad jobs. They have a phony employment rate. Bad jobs numbers last week. Did you see those bad jobs numbers? And that's the last jobs report before the election. I was shocked. I was so surprised that they let that happen because it's all rigged.
Well, let's talk about his comments with Noelle Nakpour. She's a former Republican congressional candidate in Florida and a GOP strategist. Jessica Ehrlich is a former Democratic congressional candidate in Florida, also a Democratic strategist. So we've got the best of all possible worlds here. Noelle, he says this election is likely to be stolen. What evidence does he have?
Well, you know, if you want to take a look back in history, you can look at, for an example, Philadelphia. In 2008, you remember when the new Black Panther movement, twirled around a nightstick to try to intimidate people that were in line to vote. And if you look at, again, in Philadelphia, you can look at in 2014 when some Republican poll watchers caught 2 election workers manipulating a machine, and they were later convicted of adding 6 votes their way. So there is some proof of it. Me coming from Florida, I know that they have ramped up in a lot of the counties. They have ramped up Republican poll watchers. You know, this is going to be a tight election, and I think there is a possibility where you could have some voter fraud, and it's been proven in the past in some of these very key election states.
Jessica, Republicans control most of the governorships and most of the state houses across the country. Are you concerned about election fraud coming versus Democrats?
I mean, everyone's always concerned to make sure that polls stay open, that people are allowed to vote, that people aren't turned away. However, over and over again, it has been shown in, bipartisan commissions in different states that a lot of these, voter election fraud laws that have been passed and asking for additional identification, are either unconstitutional or not necessary because, it's usually the call that happens when someone feels that they're losing. And, obviously we have a sordid history of the hanging Chad and everything else in the state of Florida. We know what it takes, to have an election gone wrong. But that's more of a mechanical error and failure in different levels. And I think at this point, for us, registration ends here today. So it's been extended to tomorrow. But for people to even register to vote, to make sure that they can vote, even if they go in person on Election Day on November 8th in the state of Florida, that has to happen by today. You can't even, register right up. You can't walk into a poll and register. So I think it's more of like a scare tactic that's going on because Trump knows that his poll numbers are going down. He doesn't believe them. Everything's against him. If he's not winning and he's actually, showing that he's losing, it's someone else's fault.
But on the point of voter ID laws, I mean, I have to show an ID to get into this building. You have to show an ID to board an airplane. Some of the most simple acts of life require an identification. Why not something like voting?
There are different forms of identification that are required because it's not just showing an ID where you have a photo taken. For people, especially those who are older, who are no longer able to drive, they may not have a driver's license, which is a huge issue in the state of Florida. And they're required to bring, so many different forms of ID. So, it's becoming onerous, which is what the Supreme Court found, was that, we have a right to vote. Yes, you need to have some form of identification to prove who you are. And, there have been instances where it's like people try to get, ballots to people who are deceased and those things. But there are a lot of checks and balances that are in place now to try to make sure that, it's as equal and even of a system as possible.
Noel,
I think the bigger issue will be people getting to the polls. What's the voter turnout going to be? People are pretty disgusted right now.
All right. Noel, Trump's cry that the election might be stolen sounds like a lot of premature sour grapes, that he's sort of preparing the ground in case he loses the election. What do you think about that?
Well, that's a good point, John. I do agree with you. It does sound like he's almost alluding to if he loses, it's because of this or it's because of that, because the election was stolen. But what I will say is I'm glad he came out and he said it. And the reason why is because he is going to rally these people that want to vote for him. If they're looking at these polls, some people, when they look at polls and there's an 11 point here and there, they're going to think, oh, why bother? He's rallying them. He's saying, guess what? You need to get out there, you need to vote, and you need to make your vote count. So in a way, maybe he's going to fire up his base to rally and get the vote out.
Also the case that, people who see Hillary Clinton ahead by 11 points might not go out and vote if they are Hillary Clinton supporters. So I guess it could cut both ways. Noel, Nick Poor, Jessica Ehrlich, thank you.
Thanks.
And don't miss the third and final presidential debate moderated by our own Fox News Sunday anchor, Chris Wallace. That's October 19th, a week from tomorrow in Las Vegas. The last Clinton-Trump showdown before Election Day kicks off at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on Fox News Channel.
Well, new information on the Hillary Clinton hacking. Wikileaks releasing documents that appear to show she discussed classified information in a paid speech. The revelations fueling criticism that Clinton tried to keep her speeches secret for a reason. Our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Harris, is live in Washington with more. Catherine?
Well, thanks, Jenna. These transcripts released by WikiLeaks show Hillary Clinton gave a speech to a group of Canadian business leaders in November 2013. And during that speech, Clinton reveals details of the 2011 raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Clinton specifically discusses sources and methods, which appears to be a violation of national security. Clinton tells the business group that an intercepted phone call was part of the intelligence trail that led to the al-Qaeda leader's compound you see here in Pakistan. It reads in part, quote, "The people who were the analysts and collectors and good old-fashioned spies who were gathering bits and pieces of information, some of them from cell phone conversations. He has just made a phone call. He said, this is the phone call. We need to figure out where he is. Then we need to follow him. And that is how we found this compound in Abbottabad." A former intelligence officer said Clinton's team showed no respect for classified information, and the investigation did not hold them accountable.
On special operations, operational security is paramount. And one of the things they see is a lack of integrity and a lack of discipline on the part of those who have looked into the incident.
The U.S. government recently took legal action against author Matt Bissonnette, the former Navy SEAL who wrote about the bin Laden mission in his book No Easy Day. Bissonnette has now agreed to pay the government nearly $7 million from his profits in exchange for a criminal investigation into the unauthorized disclosure of classified information will be closed. Fox News asked the CIA whether any similar action is being considered in Clinton's case and whether she asked them in advance for approval to discuss a classified information for, pardon me, having a brain cramp right there, in exchange for, a paid fee. So the bottom line is there seems to be a double standard in the Matt Bissonnette case and the Clinton case. Neither, from what we can see in our reporting, asked for permission in advance. They both did it for personal profit. Jenna.
It's very interesting, the comparison of those two cases.
Yeah.
And we all feel the same way, Catherine, considering the news cycle, that there's moments where you just... It just needs a second to kick in.
Okay.
And then we're back, right?
All right. Thank you for being so forgiving.
Okay.
Of course. See you next time.
Donald Trump sharing the stage at a swing state rally with a much younger version of himself. So how did the Donald's mini-me handle the spotlight? We'll introduce you to a new campaign star. And new allegations Russia might be trying to tip the scales in Trump's favor by giving false information to Wikileaks. Can the U.S. government do anything to stop it? Also, we want to hear from you. Which battleground states do you think Trump will win? Our live chat is up and running. Go to foxnews.com/happeningnow to join the conversation.
Hillary Clinton campaigning in Florida, a battleground state both she and Donald Trump need to win. Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Francis. Clinton going after millennials. She is set to appear at Miami-Dade College in Miami at 3 p.m. Eastern, and she will be joined by a familiar name, a throwback to the Bill Clinton era. It's Throwback Tuesday, apparently. Former Vice President Al Gore making his first campaign appearance. Today's stop for Clinton comes as she tries to build on recent momentum in the key swing state. Fox News editorial scorecard now rating Florida as lean Democrat instead of a pure toss-up. We're going to have more on that coming up later in the show. We have Fox team coverage. Carl Cameron is standing by. But let's begin with Jennifer Griffin, who is live in Miami. Jennifer, what is the thinking having Al Gore on the trail?
Well, it certainly is a throwback to the 90s. We understand that Hillary Clinton will introduce Al Gore. He will then speak about one of his pet issues, of course, climate change, which is so important to millennials in this election. That's why they are having it here at Miami-Dade College, one of the largest colleges in the all-important state of Florida. Now, Gore is a virtual rock star on college campuses because of his 2005 documentary on global warming, An Inconvenient Truth. Second, the former vice president will make the point that a vote for a third-party candidate like Jill Stein or Gary Johnson could actually lead to an unintended consequence, as it did during the 2000 election. Many of these students don't know who Ralph Nader is, but Al Gore blamed that third-party candidate for costing him the presidency. The Florida, of course, Melissa, is a symbolic choice since Gore lost the election here by 537 points back in 2000, back in 2000. So they chose this for all the symbolic reasons in terms of third-party candidates and how they can affect the election. Melissa?
Al Gore is a rock star. That's a challenge for me to picture, but I hear what you're saying. How did this warming come about between the Clintons and the Gores? Because they have quite a history of frosty relations over time.
Well, they do. And Melissa, remember that Al Gore refused to endorse Hillary during the primary against Bernie Sanders. And he also was a no-show at the Democratic convention. He was a very late endorser of Hillary Clinton. That all indicates the level of frosty relations between Gore and the Clintons. Her campaign chairman, we're told, John Podesta, staged the intervention and arranged for this single campaign appearance today. With the rise of Donald Trump, the frostiness closeness in their relationship has melted faster than the polar ice cap. Before leaving New York, Hillary Clinton called into the radio show of Bishop Victor Curry, a Florida preacher with a very large African-American audience. Here's what she said.
Florida is the key. If we win Florida, there's no way my opponent can win. That's why he's going to be in Florida today. He knows that. And despite all of the terrible things he has said and done, he is still trying to win this election. And we cannot be complacent. We cannot rest.
Another fun fact today is the 41st anniversary of Bill and Hillary Clinton's wedding. It's their wedding anniversary. Bill Clinton is campaigning elsewhere in Florida. Back to you, Melissa.
Whew, there's a lot in that. All right, thank you so much for that. Donald Trump fundraising in Texas and campaigning in Florida today, as we mentioned, after going on a Twitter tirade against Republicans pulling back support from him, including House Speaker Paul Ryan. Trump tweeting, quote, "Despite winning the second debate in a landslide, every poll, it is hard to do well when Paul Ryan and others give zero support." Chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is covering all the action live from Panama City Beach, Florida, where Mr. Trump will be later today. Carl, so is the GOP in an all-out war right now?
Some factions of it sure are. Today's a very important day in Florida, not just because the Gores, the Clintons, and Donald Trump are all campaigning here, but in Florida today and a total of 13 states around the country, it's the last day to register to vote. Trump actually mentioned it by retweeting his son today for the first time. But if folks want to weigh in on this election in any of these 13 states, including Florida, today's the time to go down and get that done. And in terms of organization, that's an incredibly important part of what both campaigns need to do. As for Donald Trump, you mentioned that he had a tweet torrent this morning. He had a whole bunch of attacks on Hillary Clinton, and as well as Paul Ryan, the House Speaker. That's part of this war between the establishment and Donald Trump's campaign. And one of his tweets was particularly interesting and spoke to that point. He basically said he's glad to have his shackles off so that now he can campaign the way he wants to. Generally speaking, people have taken that to mean he can be completely as wild and as aggressive as he wants to be and doesn't have to worry about being politically correct or even political. He can pretty much say what he wants to. There's a new ad out by the Trump campaign today, and health. Melissa?
All right. Carl Cameron, thank you so much. A blast from the past returns today in Florida. As we mentioned, former Vice President Al Gore will join Hillary in Miami in less than an hour. But many of the people that will speak, or they will speak to, are too young to remember his time in office. Al Gore began as a congressman from Tennessee. Later, he became a senator. He ran for president in 1988, losing in the primaries, and then in 1992, Bill Clinton chose him as his running mate. After serving 8 years as vice president, he took another shot at the White House in 2000, just barely losing to George W. Bush in a race so close it went to the Supreme Court. Since leaving office, he won a Nobel Prize for his work on global warming. Joining me now is Simon Rosenberg, president and founder of NDN and a former Clinton campaign advisor. We also have Larry O'Connor, editor-at-large for HotAir.com. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
Simon, I'm going to start with you. I mean, sure. Florida, boy, this is bitter ground. For Al Gore. I mean, we mentioned he lost there by just 537 votes. If we want to remind the viewers here, the recount took 5 weeks. There was litigation, and he blamed it on Ralph Nader. So now he is going back there and essentially trying to stop the same thing from happening to Hillary Clinton as millennials gravitate, maybe in part, towards the Green candidate who addresses the issue of climate change. Will it work?
Yeah, I think it's good that the Clinton campaign is doing this for many, many reasons. You've covered many of them. This is a complicated story. I mean, and I think that they're going to tell two stories today. I think one is that about the throwing away your vote for a third-party candidate. We went through this as a country in 2000 and as a Democratic Party. But also, I think you're going to hear a lot about Al Gore being sort of a very modern figure, actually, not a throwback figure. Many of the things he worked on, enabling the digital economy, climate change, these are things that are happening now. And he was very involved in helping really construct and build the modern world. And then finally, I think the other piece of it is going to be the discussion about how when he was in office with Bill Clinton, we had robust economic growth. It's happened 2 consecutive Democratic administrations. I think they'll be making the economic case as well for the Democratic ticket.
Okay. Larry, the challenge with that is that if they're looking at going after the millennials, the problem with Hillary Clinton and the millennials is that to them, she doesn't seem genuine. You know, they don't trust her or any of the system. You know, I mean, they were for Bernie Sanders because he seemed like he was offering something different. So how does Al Gore address that problem of not wanting what is the old establishment, what has been tried, what is tired?
Yeah, retread Tuesday in Florida, right? By the way, Simon, I just want to be clear here. Enabling the digital economy, is that the 2016 version of inventing the internet? That's the first time I've heard that one about Al Gore's great achievements. Listen, this is, to me, this shows that they're not partying in Hillary headquarters the way we saw on Saturday Night Live this last Saturday. If they're really concerned about millennials going third party, that means they think this is going to be a close election. They think Florida is going to be close. I just find it a little distasteful, just a couple of days after Hurricane Matthew hit Florida, and I think the death toll in that state was 5, that we've got Al Gore down making the case, the false claim that global warming is the cause of hurricanes, considering we just had the longest drought of hurricanes. Isn't that a little politically gross to be going down there and making that case right after the hurricane hit the state? I don't like it. I don't think Floridians will like it.
I mean, although that there are people out there who believe in that theory, right, Simon? I mean, there are people in southern Florida who feel like the reason why a lot of their beaches are disappearing and things are happening, and you're seeing this sort of dramatic weather.
I'm talking specifically about hurricanes.
Okay, Simon, go ahead. I'll let you address that. Hang on.
I don't know that we're going to solve. I don't know that we're going to solve this debate on this show right now. But certainly, I think that I spend time in South Florida. I've worked in political campaigns down there. There is enormous concern about rising sea levels and climate change in South Florida. It is one of the most important issues in all of Florida politics. Larry's just wrong on this one, I think. Larry's often correct and smart and right, not on this one. I think this is a pressing issue for Florida voters.
Let's move to the other side of the ballot for a moment. Arizona Senator John McCain says not only is he no longer endorsing Donald Trump, he's not even voting for either major candidate. Listen to this.
When Mr. Trump attacks women and demeans the women in our nation and in our society, that is a point where I just have to part company. It's not pleasant for me to renounce the nominee of my party. He won the nomination fair and square. But I have daughters. I have friends. I have so many wonderful people on my staff. They cannot be degraded and demeaned in that fashion.
So, Larry, you know, the other side of this argument would say neither of these human beings are particularly decent. I mean, we've seen a lot of bad stuff about both candidates that are on the ballot. You know, I'm sort of ashamed of both of them. At the end of the day, maybe you have to look to your issues and make a choice on that. If you care about the economy and growth, maybe that's one candidate. If you're very focused on the environment, maybe that's another candidate. What do you think of that argument?
Yeah, I think that a lot of American people are looking at this election and saying they got to choose between two people that they don't really like. And you're right. That's where party politics are supposed to come in. You support the nominee of your party even though you may not like the person. That's why, as a long-suffering Republican, I'm sort of used to this behavior from John McCain. You know, he was primaried by J.D. Hayworth 6 years ago, and during that primary, he ran to the right of Donald Trump. Okay. He promised to build a wall, and then 6 months later, when he was elected, he was standing next to Charles Schumer. So he needed to support Donald Trump to win his primary. He's won his primary. Now he's been looking for an excuse to not support Donald Trump.
Simon, forgive me. We're out of time. I'll give you an extra one next time. Thanks to both of you.
He doesn't need it. Don't worry about it.
Come on now. Damning new details in the latest batch of WikiLeaks emails showing a then CNN contributor and future interim DNC chair giving Team Hillary advance notice on a question to be asked at a town hall. Can you say cahoots? Plus, who heard this in the debate? So do you know this story? A lot of people don't. We dug into that 1975 case. Trace Gallagher separates fact from fiction about Kathy Shelton.
Every story, every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7, channel 115.
A bombshell in email dump number 3 from WikiLeaks today showing interim DNC chairwoman Donna Brazile leaked a question to the Clinton campaign ahead of the CNN town hall back in March. At the time, Brazil was a CNN contributor and vice chair of the DNC. This is just one of several potentially damaging new revelations from the Clinton camp. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us live from Washington with more on this. What have we learned so far?
Well, thank you, Melissa, and good afternoon. Among the WikiLeaks is a transcript of one of Hillary Clinton's speeches back in 2013, where she talks to some Toronto businessmen about the bin Laden incident, and Trump has just weighed in on this issue, issuing a statement that reads in part, Clinton has such a disregard for classified information that one has to wonder if she would even be able to receive a security clearance should she be elected president. These transcripts released by WikiLeaks, as I mentioned, show Hillary Clinton did give this speech to a group of Canadian business leaders, and during that speech, Clinton revealed details about the 2011 raid that killed Osama bin Laden. Clinton specifically discusses sources and methods, including an intercepted phone call, which appears to be a national security violation. A former special operations professional told Fox News that incidents like this make it hard for the U.S. to lead by example.
I feel, frankly, almost disingenuous in many cases talking to a foreign counterpart about how he and his organizations and how he and his government should start to conform to these kinds of principles. And he turns and looks at me and laughs and would say, well, what about the United States?
Asked if Clinton had cleared the information with the CIA in advance. That's standard practice when a mission is discussed in public. The CIA office offered no comment on the information or the incident, Melissa.
And what about the DNC leaks?
Well, earlier leaks have revealed that there are what I would call preferred reporter lists, where the Clinton campaign has felt comfortable planting positive stories about their candidate. And now there's this new email that was released today strongly suggesting that the interim DNC chair, Donna Brazile, who is also a CNN commentator, may have shared a question in advance of the network's March town hall. The exchange was between Brazile and Clinton's campaign manager, Jen Palmieri, and it was focused on the issue of the death penalty. In the email, it's not framed as a question per se, but Brazile strongly hints that it might be an issue that would come up, and a transcript shows it did come up in the Clinton town hall. Asked about the email that was hacked by WikiLeaks, a CNN spokesman said, to be clear, they have never given a question in advance, which is technically true based on the email, but the email shows that it was hinted very strongly that she needed to be prepared for this question, Melissa.
It's all in the wording in the end, isn't it? Amazing. All right, Catherine Herridge, fantastic as always. We appreciate your reporting. Hillary Clinton trying to shore up support in Florida as a new Fox News electoral scorecard shows some interesting changes here. Ed Henry breaks it down. That's coming up next. Clinton campaigning today in Florida, and she is bringing him back up to help turn the swing state blue. Former Vice President Al Gore appearing with her today in Miami. Florida will be the key to winning the White House, and of course Gore famously lost there just a few hundred votes in the 2000 presidential election. A brand new Fox News scorecard shows that state now leaning Democrat. Ed Henry is live in Washington. Ed, it's not just Florida. Clinton's seen a big movement in another battleground state as well, right?
That's right. This is a big deal, Melissa. And there's a reason both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are in Florida today. Trump going back for more stops later this week. No Republican has won the White House without Florida since Calvin Coolidge. And so we're seeing the Sunshine State turn against Trump now, as is Nevada, site of the final debate next week. Look at this. You can see on our map, both were toss-up states. Now we are moving them into the lean Democrat column. Nevada with 6 electoral votes, 29 in Florida. Look at what that does to the big picture. We have Clinton closing in on locking up 307 electoral votes, Trump at 187, 44 still up for grabs, but those 44 that are up for grabs don't matter, essentially, if this pans out, because Clinton only needs 270 electoral votes to win. So if the election were held today, the good news for Trump is it's not being held today, Melissa. He's got a little more time.
That's right. In 29 days, anything can happen, as we've seen in the last 29 days. But, Ed, you have new information suggesting that Trump has another problem brewing in Florida?
It may not just be the Trump tapes that are moving some of these polls against him. The cumulative impact of his comments on minorities could also be a factor. We talked yesterday on the show about early voting. Well, the Clinton camp has just put out some new numbers. And look at Florida when it comes to new requests for early ballots. Just in the last week, as some of this has played out, requests from Democrats outnumbering Republicans 2-1, even though the GOP has traditionally done better in terms of vote by mail in Florida. Most telling, 1 in every 3 new ballot requests